we talk about worldviews in our coaching course, and that there's more than one worldview. And when we start to live as if there's only one worldview, and my worldview is the right worldview, that is the beginning of conflict. And so we study worldview, and we began to listen and began to notice that how the world is occurring to you may not be the way that it's occurring for me, because we have different backgrounds, different interpretations, different meanings, different ways of seeing the world, different education. So a whole bunch goes into what it means to be a human being. And then we start to listen and dwell in a way where we can say, I can honor your worldview and you can honor my worldview, which takes a lot of work. It's not easy. And in that, what starts to emerge is what I'm beginning to find, that there is a grounded place in which humanity can emerge, which is that place of honor, respect, dignity, and it comes out an understanding of an intrinsic value that we all have as human beings. Right now, I'm in dialogue with someone, and we learned this in our course also, and we're talking about the scientific worldview. You know, the scientific worldview. Scientists have come to believe that if they say it, it's the way that it is. Some of them, the crazy ones, not so smart ones. But the really smart ones know that the way they say it is the way that they're interpreting it, and their interpretations are adding to the meanings that we give. So that's a big conversation that's happening right now worldwide. Is the scientific worldview the only worldview? Or is there a worldview that's occurring before science? And can we get in on that? So we might say that that is the mystical worldview, but we'll see. This conversation has been going on for thousands of years. It's not a new one. And so out of this conversation, what's emerged is religion, what's emerged is philosophy, and then of course there is the scientific model, a worldview of what this universe is and what it means to be human. Humanity. What is humanity? Big question. With new interpretations and new meanings evolving. What is humanity? And what's our role on this tiny planet? And I will say that the Earth is tiny compared to other planets and the entire universe, but what's our role here? What's your role? What's our role together? Are we here at the whims of some force that we have no say-so with? Or are we here co-participants and co-creators in this wonderful, amazing, magnificent world, and especially here on the earth? And our mission here at Ideal Coaching and what we're up to is enriching the world through coaching until every voice is heard. Enriching the world through coaching, and coaching becomes it's a form. It's like we have people who become doctors. They use that as a form, as a way of learning, as a set of skills, practices, technologies, so that they can doctor. Or music is something that we human beings, in terms of all the the aesthetics, it's something that we human beings need. It's something that we participate in and together with it, because that pulls forth something from us that the scientific world can't pull from us. And then there's art, like paintings. And so there's so much that goes on with us human beings. And how do we participate. And I've been very blessed. Kate said, how many years did you say? 20, Kate? No, it's been more like almost 40 years since I started learning about coaching. But I've always been curious. Who am I? What am I? Why am I? Who are you? What are we? And that led me to being a transformational trainer. And then I started to say, everybody's not going to go and sit in a great big classroom. What else is possible? And then I studied coaching with my main teacher, Dr. Fernando Flores, who introduced me to ontology. And ontology is the study of being. It's a broad philosophy here in the Western world, but it's also very consistent in a number of ways with many of the great thinkers out of your part of the world. And when all of that started to come together for me, it answered many questions about who are we as human beings, and do I have a role here? What is my participation? Am I an innocent bystander? Or is the way I'm thinking, living, being, and acting contributing to how the world is occurring, not only for me, but as well for others? And that's what we're doing here today, and that's what we look at. I would say that this is one of the most important questions that we can answer today. But as I study, every generation says that this is one of the most important questions that we can answer. Who are we? And what's the role we play in this evolution? Is evolution just occurring by itself? Are we co-participants in how the world is occurring? And there's some evidence that we're co-participants. If we look at, the environmental crisis, what's happening there, and what we add to that, which is producing a big problem. I call it a problem. And we may solve it and we may not. We look at war. Does war just happen? Or is war a mindset? Or is it a particular narrative that we've told for thousands of years? To say, that comes from scarcity, control, domination, all that stuff that goes on. But it's a worldview. It's a narrative. And it's being authored by, now stay with me on this and everybody breathe. It's being authored by all of us. As I speak with people and I say, if we could, for 1 minute, if all 7.9 billion people on this planet could for 1 minute hold peace and harmony in our consciousness, like really hold it and be it, then war would disappear, at least for a minute, completely. People would drop their guns, their bombs, or someone out there, with a gun trying to hold up an individual, someone beating their kids, whatever it is, it would stop for 1 minute if every person had a consciousness of kindness, love, compassion, joy, because that's also available to us. But we are unknowingly, most of the time, choosing scarcity, hatred, and we say it's for our safety, so that I can be safe. But that's another long conversation. KH in a few weeks is going to have a course around questions and what questions are we asking? Because the questions we're asking will lead us in a particular direction. If you take the word question, Q-U-E-S-T, quest I on, what question is. And the quest that you're on that is leading you I don't say, it's a different school of thought, that we're here accidentally. I would even say that your being here this evening at this particular time in this conversation has to do with the quest you're on, that you're already on, and maybe you've forgotten. But there's something to you that is so magnificent, that is so brave, that's so courageous. And that's all people. It's all people. And we forget it. And when we forget that, then we began to live in a way that there's something wrong with us. And the quest, and that's what religion has been, supposedly been telling us, that there's nothing wrong with you. Science have said there's something wrong with you, psychology, but it goes on and on and on. And I'm saying, it's like the Tao. You are the Tao. And as the Tao, as this water river that you're swimming in, then you say, I am this, I am not that, you're this, you're not that. And it goes on and on and on. And coaching is about, that's why I say we're enriching the world through coaching. It's about learning to listen, those interpretations, and ask a different set of questions. And then as we connect, and you do this in community, if you can't do it in isolation, because in our isolation, we live as if we're separate. But when we're in community, we're called because we're interconnected, we're interrelated, interdependent. And a part of what's happened, we start to live as if we're separate, which is the biggest myth we all live in. Do you know that we are breathing the same air, thousands of miles apart from each other? The same air that we're breathing is the air that's connecting us at one level. Then there's so many other ways of connection. And coaching teaches us this kind of coaching, that you're not separate. And the separation, in the context of separation, you can only be about scarcity and say there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with you. But when we begin to live, and I do mean live it, not just an intellectual concept, but to experience it bodily, embodied, that you're whole. And that wholeness means that you are one with everything. And what we are about as human beings, what I'm beginning to find in my own life, is that quest to know home. And what is home? Not like a place, but like a state of consciousness, a state of well-being, a state of being connected and interconnected with everything. And when we begin to live that way, it becomes very hard to harm other people, your husbands, your wives, your children, your neighbors. And then you start to be kinder to yourself. Some of you have heard this story before. There were these young people went to this wise person, and they said, wise person, I have two wolves inside of me. It feels like that. One is wow and punching and all of that kind of stuff. And then I have another one who is kind, loving, peaceful. And then they looked at the wise person and they said, I want to know which one will grow. And the wise person said, the one that you feed. That's the one that will grow. The one that you feed will grow. It's like everything in our lives, what we feed grows. What we give energy and attention to grows. It doesn't mean that the other wolf is not there. It just means that which one are you giving attention and power to? And we're finding that people who are awake in a particular kind of way, not like enlightened, that's not what I'm talking about here, but awake in a particular way that can help us discern which wolf we're feeding. And I call those people coaches. Then we begin to cultivate. And the key word here is cultivate. We begin to cultivate an environment, a self that is the promise of what it is to be a human being. Just in all the great teachings, it's asking you, what do you center yourself in? What do you ground yourself in? And again, and being in a community where people are grounded in the, so that there's an opening for you to relate to yourself and reality in a whole different way of what we call reality. And an opening, which is what we make possible for people. And hopefully this morning can be, and this afternoon, evening for you, can be another opening in which you can get to view yourself, interpret yourself in the world. And an opening is not just an understanding. It involves a shift in your being. It involves a shift in how you're interpreting. And it alters your very perception of you and life. When that kind of opening is present, then there's a possibility for you inventing, designing a whole nother possibility of what and who you are. Therefore, shifting the entire world. So let's say that there's an aspect of us that is pure awareness. And let's say, and with this awareness, we observe. And as we are observing, not like detached, but there's a way that we start to observe. And in observing, we start to see, which is, the whole thing about this is right and this is wrong. This is something that we're all saying. Or in nature, if we're going through nature, there's a part of us that can say, put your foot here, don't put your foot here. And we'll call that awareness. But there's a meta awareness. And the meta awareness is the awareness of all awareness. And that allows you to observe which wolf you're feeding, so that you stop being surprised by what shows up in your life. Sometimes you're surprised, but if you're feeding the wolf of anger and deceit and not trusting, it's crazy to expect that you're going to have a life of trust, joy, and happiness. I know all of you are going to agree with me on that, but some people go, well, why isn't my life full of love and joy? And I'm just doing the best that I can. I have a nephew who lives in Kansas City, great nephew. He recently divorced his wife. And then he's upset with how his life is going after he divorced his wife. So I said, now, who told you to divorce your wife? He said, I wasn't happy. Oh, so now you weren't happy, you divorced your wife, and now you have your new girlfriend, 3 kids, and your 3 kids, and you're calling me, asking me for money? And he paused, and then he said, my family won't help me out. Anybody ever heard this one before? My family won't help me. I want to be happy. Now, you want to be happy is not my concern, DL. So then we got into a coaching relationship, which we advise you not to coach your family, but he's my nephew and I've been coaching him for a long time. And I said, okay, come on, I will pay for your daughter's daycare school, but to give you money, no, not gonna do it. Do you think he was happy? at first. No, he wasn't. But I'm very clear, and I've done this with my family. I am not going to, I will support you and I will support your kids. But you, get out of here, guy. And so, but he's, but it's interesting. So why do I tell you that? Because I'm like that sometimes in my life. I think someone should be giving me something when I have another conversation, this narrative I live in called Poor Betty. Can't do this. Not, and here she's a Black woman in the United States and prejudice and all of that and being a woman. And then I have to go, wait a minute. So what is that? Shift the narrative. And I've shifted the narrative. I am blessed in my life, truly blessed. And I've worked hard and I've learned and I've had a community. And I would say what has made the biggest, one of the biggest difference for me is a community of people I put myself in and the contributions I've made to other people. I say giving and receiving is one and the same. What you give, you receive. That makes sense? Is this true? I don't know. But what do you use to navigate the wolves that you're feeding? With no blame here. What are you feeding? Which wolf are you feeding? Are you feeding the wolf that gives you self-confidence, that gives you courage, that gives you compassion and love? Are you feeding the wolf that goes, poor, pitiful me, I can't do this? And it's very subtle. So just take a second right now and write down which wolf are you feeding and in what way are you feeding it? And this is the power of us human beings. See, we human beings are biological. We are biological phenomenon, meaning we all have a body, and we study biology in our course. What is our biology? What does it mean? And what does it mean to be embodied? We're also social and historical, meaning we have a narrative. We all have stories. We have interpretations that we're born into. And then we're linguistic beings. We live in language. And in language, we shape ourselves. And so we learn about what is language, languaging, not language like between Cantonese or Malay or and not that like that, but language as the constitutive force in our lives. Because what you say, you become. And what you say others are, you begin to interact with them as if they are that you are, that you've assessed them to be. And we live as if we are our stories, our narratives, and forgetting that we're the narrative makers. This is what I'm beginning to say and to appreciate in a profound way, is that we need new narrative makers here in the world. Because if you're making the same narratives, you're going to end up in the same place. But what is it to be a new narrative maker? And not just for you, but we're talking about ecologically, but that we're interdependent, that we're all here in this together. And the pandemic showed us that. What happens in the United States impacts what happens in Malaysia, Ukraine, any place, what you're doing, what we're doing is not limited to a country, a city, or even a household. We're all in this together. So what's the new narrative you want to write? Because you can. And what is it going to take to shift from the old narrative of separation, isolation, and begin to write a narrative from the we, moving from me to we? Not easy, not impossible, but it will take a mindset, a whole new mindset. Whatever narrative we write as a species today, what do you think is going to happen 100 years from now about that narrative? What would you say? Yeah. And who says it's important? I'm saying it's important. And there are enough people on this planet who saying it's important that we author a new narrative, and a new narrative of interdependency. And that's what we are learning, because we've forgotten it out of the old narrative of separation, isolation. Okay? But just to answer my own question, 100, 200 years from now, people will say, oh, that narrative's out of date. Oh, what were those people thinking? Didn't they know that the earth was not flat, that the earth was round? Didn't they know this and this and this and this and this? But that's what happens with narratives. Just like your own individual narrative. That narrative that you wrote when you were a little girl or little boy is not sufficient for you as a woman or man today. Make sense? I shouldn't ask you if it makes sense. But just listening. So you start to listen this narrative. And a part of what we say here at Ideal Coaching is that we learn how to write the author the narratives that speak to our humanity, abundance, joy, love, giving as well as receiving. And that's something that you offer. And then we learn the principles and practices of that. So you become competent. And the key for us is that you become competent in assisting others in writing new narratives. And not telling them what narratives to write, but begin to, and I like this word, begin to dwell together in such a way, what can emerge are narratives of, like I said, interdependency, connection, beginning to find your place in the world with respect and dignity, and having others do that as well. And to me, that's worthwhile. It's worth getting up in the mornings for, to say, what am I going to bring to the world today? As I'm sure you do as well. But what will give the world that I embody and that my ancestors worked so hard to have us be here in and with and as? So what's the legacy I'm going to leave? And what can we give to, war is going on now, always has, right? But what makes it so different this time is the danger of the technology that we have. Wasn't so dangerous before for the whole planet. Yesterday was the 50 some anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, one of the most famous speeches ever given. But Dr. King had a dream. How did it come about? It came about out of conflict. He was here in the United States, where it was racism, prejudice, and there was a war going on. And Dr. King, who became good friends with Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh out of Vietnam, who died recently, they became friends, and they started to say, how can we have peace on this planet? and peace doesn't require simply letting people do whatever they want to do to you. Peace requires honor and respect and dignity for all. So yesterday, the death of his anniversary, I was remembering. I was living here in North Carolina, a little ways from here. And I remember on the day that he was shot, I was in school. I was at the university, one of the universities. And we were sitting in the cafeteria playing cards. And someone came charging into the cafeteria, and he had tears running down his face, and he was screaming something. And we said, sit down. And you see, we're eating, sit down, get out of here. And he got on the table and he kept saying, the king is dead, the king is dead. And people started saying, shh. And then the room got silent. And he said, Martin Luther King was just shot. And all of us stood up in silence and walked out of the cafeteria and to walk down to Greensboro, North Carolina. And then we had people, because we'd been fighting for civil rights for a long time here in this country, and stopped the war in Vietnam. There were a number of things going on. But people were saying, don't cause any trouble, because we knew there would be, we had guns and tanks, or they had guns and tanks and all of that. So be careful. But someone threw a brick and broke a window. And when that happened, of course, people started to run. So I grabbed my roommate's hand, her name was Jackie, and we started to run. I said, Jackie, let's get out of here. I had been tear gassed so many times in my life. I said, I don't want to be tear gassed again. It is not pleasant. You can't breathe. So we started to run, and we ran down this alley, and then we heard this booming voice that said, you two niggers, turn around and turn around right now or you're dead. And we stopped. And I looked at Jackie and I said, let's turn around. We could have been shot in the back. We didn't know, but we said, let's get out of here. And so we ran all the way back to campus. I didn't know I could run that fast. And they didn't have cell phones then. We had telephone booths in the dormitories. And there was a whole line. And I called my father when I got my chance, and I was hysterical. I said, Daddy, you got to come and get me. We lived my home was about 3.5 hours from where I was going to school. And he said, we had a curfew. He said, I can't come tonight, but I tell you what, I'll be there when the sun is up tomorrow. Don't go out, just stay there. And so he was there the next morning with the truck to take me home. Well, why do I tell you that? The story. People give their lives in a number of ways so that we can be free. And what is freedom? What it is so that you can think, so that you can be here on this call. There's some places where people cannot be on this kind of call. There are some places where there's so many things where people can't learn, they can't read certain things, they can't talk about certain things. And I understand society, but I want you to know, coaches are not all activists. Some are, but they're not all. But I can say we are activists for kindness, for love, for equality, for respect. And that's for each of us, as well as this tiny planet that we live on. We cannot continue this way environmentally and have a place for your children, your grandchildren, and your great, great, great grandchildren to have clean air to breathe and water to drink. We have choices. Which animal are we gonna feed? Are we gonna feed the animal of consumerism, materiality? Do whatever you want to do on this planet? Are we gonna find that aspect of us as humans that speaks to the intrinsic wholeness and goodness of life? And then we can have peace. But I say we begin to have peace even before peace shows up for everyone, because one person having peace, like Dr. King and Thich Nhat Hanh and so many others, they bring a message. So what message do you want to bring to your workplace, to your family, to your community? What message are you? I've worked with some amazing people in my life over time. And then one person who's very well known was a student of mine many, many years ago in New York. And when I hear his name, I go, what did he learn in that course? Now he's in prison, serving a lifetime for some things that he did to women, huh? Not very kind to women. It was in the entertainment industry. He fed a different wolf. He started to feed the wolf of materiality, control, power. I can do whatever I want to do. But that's not the world. Yes, you can do whatever you want to do, but there are also consequences. The law of reciprocity is in place. So feed the wolf that will have you create the world that you want for your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors' kids, all the little ones that are coming along, and for you. I thank you. I thank all of you. If you want to questions for me, anything to say, and this is my promise to you. If you come and play with KH and the team there, we have a course starting in May. Now I'm going into my materiality, okay? Come and play with us. And join this mission to enrich the world with what you bring already, because we take what you have and add it to the mix. We're not there to take it from you. And we learn this incredible mechanism called coaching. And we put a mark on this world, as did transformational trainings many, many years, and has been for years. And so now it's the one-on-one group in businesses, wherever we can go, just have people love themselves and love each other. Not simple, but not easy.